You have 168 hours in every single week, yet "I don't have time" is still the #1 excuse for why you don't do all the things that you want to do and achieve everything that you could. So how do we create more time? Because I stopped using this excuse after I discovered there was always a way to build the lifestyle that I wanted. So here are my top 5 ways to create more time in your life, and stay till the end and I'll share with you my favorite tip for creating more time. The first way I make time, I learned how to prioritize. Every quarter I write out these 7 areas of my life, and what I do then is I rank them 1 through 7, what is most important to me right now for this 3-month period. And it's actually a lot harder than it looks because all 7 of them are important, and that's the challenge. You've got to push yourself to really figure out what is it that's calling out to you right now. Then take the top 3 categories, and what you have to do is just write out the 3 biggest mover activities within each of those. What are the 3 biggest activities that will really move the dial in those areas, and then just focus on them. And take this as permission to be selfish. Don't feel like you're going to be judged for these decisions, even by yourself. We need to make it clear what we're after, because we are point and shoot creatures. So if you can have a clear destination ahead of you, time becomes irrelevant because you're so zoned in on what you're after that you will achieve it and you'll make the appropriate sacrifices to be able to get there. We spend so much time just doing things that aren't important to us, and it just fills up our life and we feel like we have no time, but that's just because we're so bogged down and that we're doing things that we just don't need to do. So take this method of finding out what is it you truly want, because then you'll have all the time in the world for it. Number 2, meal prepping. We spend over an hour every single day cooking and preparing food, and for me it just became too much. So I learned how to meal prep, and it has actually saved me on so many occasions because all my cooking time is putting that meal or that box in the microwave and it's good to go. That is 5 minutes versus 60 on 4 days out of my week after I've meal prepped. It also keeps you healthy instead of sacking it off and ordering a takeaway. Meal prep is not a difficult task. It's just whatever you were going to make and then just make multiple extra portions of it. I will link some of the basic recipes that I do in the description below, but it's truly whatever you want to do. Whether it's pasta, whether it's chicken, whatever it is. I actually meal prep burgers just because when I make them, if I'm putting in that effort, I'm not going to have it just for that meal because it's such an ineffective use of my time. You really can't afford not to adopt this habit. Number 3, and this is going to be off-putting to all you Gen Zers out there, abandon messaging and take up voice notes and calls. We spend 48 minutes every single day messaging. It's actually a huge time sink for us, and we don't really notice it because it's a quick couple of minutes here, a quick couple of minutes there, but you're sinking so much time into your day into what is usually pretty irrelevant. All my friends now know that if they want to get hold of me, call me because I will always pick up. But if you text me, by and large, it's really unlikely that I'm going to come back to you because it's just not how I operate. I found that if I'm able to have phone calls with people or do voice notes, it's so much more effective. Full disclosure, I sucked at voice notes and I'm still not particularly great, but I just commit myself to doing them. 1, because it just creates so much more time if I'm able to just compress all my thoughts into this quick sort of 30-second, 45-second voice note versus me sat there with my phone out, kind of scribing away, deleting, going back. It's just really ineffective. So if you want to create more time in your life, build a system around you where everyone knows that if they want to get a hold of you, they call you up and you have a 2-minute conversation to hash out what would have been 20 minutes back and forth trying to organize a plan. I know this one might be difficult, and as I say, it's not a normal adaptation just to go to voice notes, but it has some cool benefits. It allows you to be a little bit unique and people tend to appreciate it, and it allows you to connect with people with your true voice rather than just text on a screen. My next tip, create awareness of time. And I do this in 2 different ways. One of them is using a calendar. There is a reason that basically every company in the world gets you to use your calendar, schedule your meetings and schedule your work, because it's what makes you the most effective. That's just how it works, and yet very few of us actually transfer that over to our regular life. And I'd highly recommend it. I didn't adopt this habit for ages because I just thought it was for losers, but it actually helped me so much. It makes the tasks real. As soon as you put them into your calendar, you can no longer ignore them and you can no longer just forget about it. Starting the day with actually building up your calendar is super useful because it once again highlights that 168 hours that we have in a week. Because when you start to actually plot it out in your day, it feels like you have so much more time than you do, because then you're not looking at all that time where you're just wasting away checking your phone, chatting to people where you don't really want to. If you look at the calendar and keep yourself regimented, it feels like you've just invigorated an extra freaking 3 hours into your day. And what it also does is if you miss a task, then you can move it to somewhere else rather than what happens when we don't have a calendar. If you just miss a task, it sort of fades into obscurity. You can actually just move it into a different time slot. So you're kind of creating time in the future for this task and not then having to struggle through with, oh, these things, they're building up on me, which is stressing you out anyway, which isn't good, which will also lead to you having less time because you're not being very effective because you're so stressed out. So if you can stay organized with a calendar and just become aware of the presence of time, that will give you a huge benefit and it will feel like you've opened up a whole new world. In a similar way, I'm also very deep into tracking. I actually love it, and once again this just shows me how much time I have in a day, because I track how many work hours do I do, but also how much time did I spend consuming content, how much time did I spend on my phone, because the trick is we only remember memorable activities. So if you've spent your time mindlessly scrolling, it feels like you had no time that day. And that's because none of what you did was memorable. So when you reflect back, you're like, oh, I didn't even have a spare moment. But that's just because you're not programmed to remember anything that's irrelevant. What we don't see and what we're not aware of, we don't take seriously. So if you constantly just operate in a world of kind of willy-nilliness of, yeah, I'll just do these sort of things today, you have no concept of that passage of time. You just need to keep bringing it right in front of your face, and it just creates this realism of time for yourself. Make sure you can get in a position where you're really aware of time. My final way I create time, I exchange money for time. I was a social media recluse for like 4 or 5 years. I really didn't like it, I didn't engage with it at all. But then I built a business. And annoyingly, it turns out it's completely necessary to be good on social media, understand how it works, and grow a bit of a presence. I looked at this and I realized I could definitely figure out how to do all these processes and put in the effort to get myself there. But it was going to be a lot. It was going to be a real sink of my time at the point where I don't have that much to give. I actually have a lot of other priorities that I needed to engage myself with. So what I've done is I've actually paid one of my close friends who actually knows loads about social media to come in and help me, because that's what we do. Oftentimes with coaches, you're not paying because you couldn't do it yourself. You're paying because you want to exchange that money for the time that it would have taken you to get there, because maybe I can get you somewhere in 12 weeks that it would have taken you 2 years to get to. What do you value more? Do you value your money or do you value your time? There's always a way to get more money, but as soon as that moment's gone, there's no pulling it back. And for you, that might be that you go home every single lunch to take your dog out for a walk. Maybe you could invest in a dog walker. Or maybe your apartment doesn't have a dishwasher and you're spending half an hour every single night washing up after you've cooked. These are all little changes that we don't really observe, but open up windows of time. I'm not saying you just have to splash all your money on maids and chefs, but if you look closely, there will be ways that you can make this exchange and get back what is the most precious natural resource. Ready for the bonus tip? And this is just a bit of a funny one, but cut out alcohol. I have never known anything more of a waste of time than hangovers, and I'm not perfect. I actually got hungover a week or two ago, and that broke my attempt to go for 100 days without alcohol. Expect the video on me actually completing that challenge at some point in 2024 at this rate. But the point stands that if you can reduce your alcohol intake, especially if you're drinking to the point that you're gonna have a hangover, this is one of the best ways to create time in your life. Because I've seen so many guys that will work through the week, they get to Friday, they start drinking, they party, and then Saturday and Sunday become a write-off. So it's like they talk about the fact they have no time in their life, but it's purely self-inflicted. At that point, that you're just writing off your 2 potentially most productive days that you could use to change your life, and you're spending it curled up in your bed, nursing a hangover, finding out which KFC deal is best to order for yourself. Don't do this. If you want to create more time in your life, cut out alcohol. So they are the top 5 ways that I actually create time in my life. I've spent the last 3 years creating experience after experience and engaging in so much stuff. And people always ask me how I do it. And this is how, and you can do it too. So learn these 5 tricks and habits, because you will not believe how much you can actually accomplish and how close you can get to your goals with a little bit more awareness of your time, a bit of prioritization, and a few habits that will just unlock your week. You've got 168 hours. Get to it.